Hello, beautiful people. I'm Kimberly Dark. I'm a sociologist and writer and storyteller, and this is the second in I guess a four-part series if you include the webinar that's coming up. All of these offerings are free because my hope is that you look for more everyday ways to interrupt social inequality. We really can do that. It doesn't mean that the collective ways that we work against social inequality are not super important. They absolutely are, but so are the everyday ways. Those things are related. So today we are talking about erasure, and I'm going to share screen with you so that you can see the big words, and I'm up in the corner here and, in the grass. Looks like I'm very small in the grass up here. All right, we're talking about erasure, perceiving who and what have been erased from your spaces. What do I mean by your spaces? Look, there is erasure that happens in schools. There's erasure that happens in the media. There's erasure that happens in the workplace. It looks different in different places, but there are some dominant cultural values that drive what we are able to see and what our mind simply erases. And that is what we're talking about today. So I just want to remind you before we go on, there is this coming up, why, when, and how to speak up about social inequality. This will be a live event and it'll be a little longer, about an hour, and 45 minutes, and then we'll have some Q&A. So I do hope you join me for that. And anybody can come to that. Please tell your friends and, let others know. All right. Do you realize that it is hard to see, hear, or even perceive information that contradicts our dominant cultural messaging? This is the first thing to understand, that, look, our minds filter information. We need that. It is a human ability that this is true. But it's a problem if we only pay attention to what the dominant culture finds important. So let's talk about erasure. So the brain likes to fit information into pre-made boxes, but the good news is this may be what the brain does, but you can give your consciousness the permission to expand. You can create more boxes for information to go into. And we do that with our awareness. Actually not a really complicated thing. So just by listening to this training today, you are capable of expanding your consciousness and what you are able to see and perceive and understand. Okay, here's an example. So let's say you're in high school and most of the people who attend your high school are white. Let's just say that's true. But hey, you believe that racial integration is a hurdle that our society already passed. I mean, school integration happened in the 1960s versus Board of Education. My God, that was 1954, my friend. So, no matter what race you are, when someone points out to you that you go to a segregated school because it's 99% white, you say, no way. I totally see students of color at my school. Now, yes, you probably do see them. You see them in part because they stand out, because they are not like most of the other people there. I just want to say, if you're a person of color, you might have already noticed this disparity, but only because that disparity is salient to your life. If you are one of those very few people of color that go to that racially segregated white school, chances are you see it in a way that the white people there don't see it. The same is true if you're, the only girl in a room full of boys. Now think about how infrequently it happens that you might be the only boy in a room full of girls, right? You might see difference then, but you might not see difference if it were all boys in the wrestling room, for instance, who are interested in that. Here's another example. So let's say about 30 people regularly attend the Fit and Fabulous class at your gym. And some of them are slender with visible muscles like the instructor, but most are kind of average looking folks. And you notice that 2 or 3 people you would consider fat are in the class regularly, right? They're often standing in the back. Class is hard, but everyone keeps up, everybody's doing it. But then the instructor comments on how, if fat people would only get to the gym, they'd look ripped too. It's a choice to be fit. You notice that even though almost nobody looks like the instructor, even though she claims that this is what she does in order to look this way. So this is an example of the people who are fat, who come regularly to the class, are erased, because if the people in class were to acknowledge their existence, it would break the narrative that we all can look like the teacher if we just work hard enough. It breaks that narrative. And rather than the mind allowing you to break that narrative, it erases the people that you know to be there, that you see day after day, week after week. And really all the people in the class that don't look like the instructor, even though they come regularly. It's kind of like you're erasing all of them too. So this is how the mind works. But if you realize that, you can start to reprogram yourself by saying, hey, what if I notice every person in this room? What if I notice power relationships in the room? What if maybe when we're, all getting a sip of water, you say something to the instructor when she or he has said something silly like this? If you just come to the gym, you'd be ripped looking like me. All right. There are so many reasons why representation matters, but I'm going to just point out a few. So media representations encourage or challenge the mind's habit of erasure. Yeah? Now, think about the film. I don't know if you saw this film, but you probably remember when it came out, Hidden Figures. I'll bet you can come up with other examples of professional erasure that are happening today. But let me just talk for a moment about this film. So just a quick synopsis in case you didn't see it. This film is about real people. There's the photo of the real people up there on top and the actors who portrayed them down at the bottom. And this is a film about, these 3 genius mathematicians who helped to send astronauts into orbit back in the 1960s. And no one knew of their work because they also happened to be Black American women. Now, there's a couple things going on here. Their work was literally erased because it broke the narrative that Black women are capable of being genius mathematicians, that Black women are indispensable to the fabric of American culture. It broke the narrative. And so those folks were completely erased. There's something else, though, that's erased along with that, and that is the fact that they were paid poorly. They didn't have adequate facilities. There's a whole part in the film, right? I don't know to what extent it's true, the exact details of any Hollywood film, but, clearly there were segregated bathrooms still, and that was hampering these women's ability to do their work because they had to be in racially integrated environments in order to do it. So many things. Segregation would have to be called into question. The intelligence of Black women would have to be called into question. All of these things would have to be changed if the mind didn't use erasure. Yeah. So we feel good like 50 years later, here's a film come out, we go, wow, things are so different now. They are not, my friends. They are not different. They just have different information inhabiting the same domains. Yeah. So I'm asking you, what examples of professional erasure can you think of that are occurring today? Let me just give you one little hint. Chances are you have been on an airplane before and a woman's voice comes over the loudspeaker and you assume it's the flight attendant until the woman says something about being the pilot. That doesn't happen very often because there are still very few female pilots, but probably you have had that experience. I have. where I go, oh, I was about to erase the fact that women can be pilots too. Keep thinking about that. Rewriting history is another form of erasure. And boy, are we in big conversations about that right now regarding critical race theory. There's so much more to say about that, and I'm not going to say it now. But rewriting history is one form of erasure. So examples, choosing which parts of enslaved people's narrative are actually told. So people's lives are complex, right? It is not that families of enslaved people never sang and danced. But when you see that as really dominant in a film, it is erasing the fact that that was a multi-generational kidnapping of human beings who were systematically tortured on a daily basis. So yes, it's amazing that people are still capable of overcoming those difficulties with song and dance in small moments and creating lives that, we still can hear about, right? That's a miracle. But what's happening is the erasure of the torture, the erasure of the systematic nature of kidnapping and murder. So choosing which parts of people's narratives are told. Also, telling a story from the 30s with human diversity that wouldn't have been possible at that time. Which show I really loved recently was that the Queen's, is it the Queen's Gambit? Oh, about the chess player. Listen, it's a beautiful little series, right? But the thing is, when she's in the orphanage, that orphanage wouldn't have been integrated in that year, and there certainly wouldn't have been a Black man in charge the way that they depicted. So this rewriting of history makes us believe that people have been happily integrated for far longer than has been the case, because we still don't have that one solved. All right, these are harmful now to our struggle to end human hierarchy, because I think it's not that big a deal, or it never happened. So there are some first steps towards stopping erasure. First of all, be aware of how the mind works. Consider what you see, hear, and perceive in a broader social context to just decide to notice. Also, when incongruities exist in film and other media, be sure to discuss them. Don't just let it slide on by. No, I brought that incongruity up about the chess series on a number of discussions. It's helpful to do that. Also, support realistic and complex storytelling. No one is all victim or all savior or all saint or all any. Also, invite diversity and complexity into your own life. Tell your story in complex ways. Now, I know that it is easier sometimes to simplify your own story for others, but let's choose very carefully when we do that. All righty, that's what I have for you today. There are more opportunities coming to grow your skills. And look, at some of them are trainings on Zoom happening in the month of April. And I also facilitate the Bodywise Professional Development Intensive, which is for anyone who works with humans. So that could be teachers, therapists, massage folks, yoga folks, anybody. So the practical trainings on Zoom are happening in April. There we go. There's about things like bias and being a better bystander, and learning to reframe for conflict resolution. Bodywise is happening in June, COVID permitting. Right now it's on the calendar. And I do hope to see you in one of these things in the future. Have a great day, folks. I'll see you around.